Street.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to take a split call with the Green Party on this first reading of the it's the second reading. Report back. Second reading of the Game Animal Council Bill. Mr. Speaker, I've got a couple of questions. One is, why are we debating this bill in urgency? And the other is, why are we debating this bill at all? Mr. Speaker, why are we debating this in urgency? Well, there can only be one reason, because the regulatory impact statement on this bill is dated 17th of March 2011. 17th of March 2011. The work was commenced in 2008 by the then Minister of Conservation, Stevie Chadwick, who engaged with the Honourable Peter Dunn to talk about wild game and game animals and the control of wild animals through hunting and through conservation measures. Mr. Speaker, one of the things that came out of that conversation was that there was a range of statutory possibilities available. And it is unfortunate that the government has chosen to pursue entirely the wrong statutory option. And this is the lost opportunity. Not the one the previous speaker spoke of, but this is the lost opportunity. Instead of being able to have an advisory committee established by the Minister of Conservation under the terms of the Wild Animal Control Act, we have a standalone Game Animal Council which costs money, which has its own statutory authority, its own legislation, in fact, when it would have been more effective and less damaging to the relationships in this highly contested and quite fractious area to have provided the authority for an advisory committee to be set up under the Wild Animal Control Act. And in fact, if that was not enough for the government, it would have been possible to amend the Wild Animal Control Act to ensure that the advisory committee could not be disestablished by the Minister. There are advisory committees under that Act at the moment, but the Minister has the ability to disestablish them at any time. If the government really wanted to give teeth to this proposal, instead of elevating it, escalating it into a bill, a statute of its own, it could have just said, this is an advisory committee under the Wild Animal Control Act, the Minister is establishing it, and the Minister will not have the power to disestablish it. And that would have been sufficient. What we have now is a bill that is going to work against the common interests of the hunting fraternity and the Department of Conservation. Mr. Speaker, there have been tensions for a long time between those two groups, but this bill does not help. This bill makes it worse, in fact, makes those relationships inevitably more fractious. Why would the government want to do that when there was conversation happening where interests on both sides were being taken into account? There is a deal of common interest because of the damage that wild animals do to our biodiversity, to our environment. So there's a deal of common interest there. But, Mr. Speaker, the only reason I can think of that the government has chosen the heavy-duty legislative option is to appease the Honourable Peter Dunn, because he was upset at being told that John Banks would be welcomed back to the Prime Minister's cabinet, but he wouldn't be. And I can only assume that this, turning up an urgency after a regulatory impact statement written more than 2 years ago, is to appease the Honourable Peter Dunn. That is not a model of democratic process. So I'm sorry to all our visitors in the gallery who are here today.
Order.
Sorry.
Oh, well, Now that I was actually indicating that it's inappropriate to
yes,
speak
that's
to
what
the
I
gallery.
thought. How
and
much
the members'
more
time is...
It's just about it. Mr. Speaker, I will speak further about this in the committee stages, and I cannot support this.
It's a split call. I recognise the honourable